welcome or welcome back to my channel. For those who don't know me, my name is Katharine, and in today's video I'm going to be describing how I rate my books. So I do my book rating system on a 5-star scale, much like it is on Goodreads. Goodreads, for those who don't know, is a reading app or website where you can track the books that you're reading, and they use a 5-star scale, so it was just easily transferable to me to use that because just me and my brain, that's just what makes sense. I know there's a lot of other people who use other rating systems or no rating systems at all. I know there's like a 10-star scale that some people use, and then I know that some people don't rate their books at all. They either just didn't like the book, or they liked the book, or they don't recommend a book, or they recommend a book. And I know in theory the 10-star scale or the no rating system may seem simpler than the 5-star scale, but I know that can be the best option for other people, but just not for me. The 5-star scale is the best version of rating for me and how I like to rate my books. But anyways, it just makes me think a little bit more about the books that I'm reading. I do like to try to mark my books as like whole star ratings, if that makes sense. It'll be like a full 3-star, a full 4-star, if that makes sense. I will do decimal ratings if I feel like it's necessary. Like, I know that I've marked some books as like 3.5 stars or 4.25 stars, but for the most part I try to either round up or round down to like full star ratings. But like I mentioned, if I feel like it's necessary to use a decimal rating, either a 0.25, a 0.5, or a 0.75, I'll do that, but I try to stay away from those as much as I can unless I feel like it's absolutely necessary. But let's just get into the rating system, and I'll give some examples of like each specific star rating. That way you get a better grasp of how I rate my books. So let's just get into this. I actually have my reading journal here along with tracking my books on Goodreads. I also track it in a reading journal because it makes me think more about the books, along with how I rate my books. Like the 5-star system, rating system, makes me think about the books and how I would rate them in the way that they do, but also using the reading journal helps me think about the books as well. It helps me do statistics, helps me see how and what I'm reading, and like it just overall makes me think about the books, and the comprehension of my books like really comes into focus when I'm like physically writing down about these books, if that makes sense. Like when I write something down, it sticks in my brain better. But anyway, this is it, okay? This is the page where I have my rating system. This is more of like a reference page where like if I'm rating a book in my reading journal, I can always come back to this page and see how I would rate the book. And let's just get into this. So the 1-star rating is I either hated it or I DNF'd it. And one example of a book that I gave 1 star is Normal People by Sally Rooney. I'm not going to get too much into the book, but basically I do have a full review in my August 2024 reading wrap-up. So if you want to go watch my full thoughts on that book, I'll tag that video down below. But essentially, in Normal People by Sally Rooney, I did finish it, but the reason why I gave it 1 star is because I absolutely hated it, and I honestly wish I had DNF'd it. But by the point I gave it 1 star, it was going to be like a 2-star throughout the whole entire book, but what really bumped it down to a 1 star is like by the end of the book, it mentioned a few things that I just morally disagree with as a Christian, so I bumped it down to a 1 star. But because it was at the end of the book, it was hard for me to DNF the book. Like those moral things that I disagreed with were like in the last 2 chapters of the book, so I was like, might as well just finish it. And then the other aspect of a 1 star is like another example is This Woven Kingdom by Tiara Mafi. That's another book that I gave 1 star, but I actually DNF'd that book. I got like 10% of the way through, which is like about 50 or 60 pages in, and I ended up just giving it 1 star. And even though, like, on Goodreads, you technically have to mark the book as finished if you want to rate the book. And that's one thing that bothers me about Goodreads, is that you have to mark it as finished to rate the book. And even though I did DNF the book, I did mark it as finished, and I rated it on Goodreads, and I just made a note that said that I DNF'd it at 10%. But that's like another example of a 1 star. So I just either give a 1 star to a book that I finish and I wish that I had DNF'd, or I do give it to a book that I actually DNF'd. And for those who do not know what DNF means, it means a book that I did not finish. So I just wanted to explain like my 1 star reading and like, not reading, my 1 star rating. Those are just a few examples of what a 1 star rating would be for me. And then a 2 star rating is basically a book that I feel like is nonsense, but maybe I can understand that other people would like it. So an example of a 2 star book for me would be Love and Other Words by Christina Lauren. I read 2 books by Christina Lauren. They were both not for me, and Love and Other Words was one of them. I also read The Unhoneymooners, if you were curious. That was also another 2 stars. But in this example, I'm going to talk about Love and Other Words. So basically, I have a few full review of Love and Other Words also in my August reading wrap up, and I'll save my ranting for that video. I'll tag that down below like I mentioned before, but basically it was not enjoyable for me like whatsoever. I did think that it was nonsense, but I could possibly see why other people like it. It's about, just in short, I'm not gonna go on a huge tangent about this, but basically it's about these 2 like middle school, high school students who basically fall in love, and it's like a dual timeline of like them also like 10 years later, and after those 10 years they weren't talking in that 10-year period, and it's them like finally reconnecting after those 10 years. And I personally, like, for me, didn't really like the ending. I didn't like the majority of the book either. I don't like reading about high schoolers necessarily, and I just don't think young adult is the genre for me. But basically I gave it 2 stars because I just found it really unenjoyable, and I thought it was nonsensical and just silly, and I didn't really enjoy it, but I could possibly see like maybe like a high schooler enjoying it, if that makes sense. And then on to the next, it's a 3 star. So it is not good, it's not bad, it's kind of just average. In my mind, like, a 3 star isn't a bad rating, but it also means that like the book was probably forgettable. A book that I can think of on the top of my head that is a 3 star would be One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I do think Taylor Jenkins Reid does write very well, but a lot of the books that I've read by her are just, you know, kind of mid and average. I did read also by her Daisy Jones and the Six, and that was also a 3 star. But in this particular instance, I'm going to be talking about One True Loves. One True Loves, essentially, I also read that in August, so I'll tag that down below like I mentioned before. Essentially, it's about this girl who ends up falling in love with this guy from her high school, and they go out to California from Massachusetts to go to college, and then they end up getting married. He is like a traveling journalist, and he ends up dying in this like helicopter crash, or he's presumed dead in this helicopter crash. This is not a spoiler, by the way. This is all in the synopsis of the book. And basically she moves back home to Massachusetts from California, and she ends up having to like get through grief, and she ends up getting into this relationship with and gets engaged to this other guy. And basically the guy who is presumably dead, like her past husband, is actually not dead, and he comes back, and it's about one true love's like trying to choose between the two guys. But basically, like, the premise of the book sounded okay, and that's why I was somewhat interested in the book. And just Taylor Jenkins Reid in general is like very hyped up on, you know, a lot of the book social media platforms, so I just decided to give it a try. But it's kind of forgettable. Like, I ended up liking the ending, but like the whole book was just kind of average and mid. Like, I'm forgetting a lot of the details in the book already, and I only read it like a few months ago, and I'll recommend it to people. Like, I'll say it's an okay book, but it was just like mid, if that makes sense. Like, if I had to come up with a sound for how I feel about 3-star ratings or 3-star books, I would just go meh. That's how it is. Meh. But anyway, let's get on to the 4-star rating. So this is a book that I really enjoyed, but something was just a bit off. So an example of this would be The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This was a read in September of 2024, so I'll tag that video down below. But essentially, it's a magical realism type book. I also believe it's considered historical fiction as well. So basically, this girl, I'm not going to get too much into it like I mentioned about previous books, because I already have my full thoughts on it in other videos. But essentially, it's about this girl named Addie LaRue, and she makes a deal with this like god, and essentially he curses her with a life of like living forever. But the thing is, the catch is that as soon as she interacts with someone, as soon as she's done interacting with them, she's forgotten. Like, no one remembers her, and you just follow her life like throughout the span of, I think, like 300 years or so. And I really enjoyed the book. It definitely gave me a 5-star feeling, and for those readers who know, you know what a 5-star reading or rating or book feels like. You know what it feels like. You know, if you know, you know. But it definitely felt that way to me. But then there was just like some aspects of the book that felt a little bit off to me. Like, there was a few characters that were a part of like the LGBTQIA, whatever else in the alphabet that you want to add in there too, and I just didn't appreciate that. And I also think that the like god that she made a deal with in the beginning of the book to give her basically eternal life was actually a demon. And just as a Christian, like, the whole like LGBT representation and also like that god or like that demon representation was just not vibing for me. Like, I just didn't appreciate that at all as a Christian. So that's why I bumped it down from a 5-star, which I wish I could have given it, but I ended up giving it a 4-star, like, because those things were missing in it. Like, those were the few things that bumped it down to a 4-star for me. And then a 5-star rating is just perfection, and I have 3 exclamation points there. So basically, this is a book that I find no fault in. I think it's just something that deserves the hype and is just, you know, perfect. And I can give an example of this. This would be Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. It's the 3rd book in the Harry Potter series. For me, at this point in the Harry Potter series, I really felt connected to the characters. I felt connected to the plot, and I really felt like the book kept on going and going. There was a lot of action, there was a lot of things going on in the plot, and not too much where I got confused, but just enough for me to like really be interested in the book and the characters and everything like that. So that is an example of a 5-star. It's probably one of my favorite books out of the Harry Potter series, if I'm being honest. And then a little extra bonus is a 6-star read. So I know I said I do a 5-star rating system, but I also have a 6-star rating, and essentially this is a book that will be on my all-time favorite books list, if that makes sense. These are books that I will die for, like it says here in my reading journal. I will take no criticism from this book. I will defend this book to the ends of the earth. And a book that I can give an example of for this is Where the Lost Wander by Amy Harmon. And I read this book in October of 2024. I'll tag that video for my reading wrap up down below, and I describe that book in full. in that video, so you can go watch that. But basically that book, just in short, is about this girl named Naomi and her family who trek out to California from Missouri on the Oregon Trail, and they are led by this man named John Lowry, and it's about Naomi and John's romance, and it was just so beautiful and wholesome, and I will take no criticism from this book. It is magical, it is everything to me, and I love that book, and I can't wait to read more of Amy Hartman's books in the future. But basically those are my ratings and the reasoning behind how I rate my books. If you have a similar rating system, please let me know, and if you have a different rating system, please let me know. I always like to see how other people rate their books, and maybe it'll give me ideas of how I can better rate my books as well. But thank you so much for watching today's video. I really enjoyed making it, and I'll see you in my next video. Make sure to do all the YouTube things that you know how to do, like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you real soon. Bye!